Hi, welcome back to my channel. This book review is for Mr. Perfect on Paper by Jean Meltzer. I have so many ways that I can go into this review. It has at least 3, maybe 4 different avenues that could easily direct this book review. So we're going to start with this one and maybe touch on some of the other things that have flown through my head. At a certain point in the book, our character, Shauna, I think Shauna Rabinowitz, am I saying that right? Let me look at that. Yeah, Shauna Rabinowitz, okay? Her sister, Dara, is the one that's looking for Mr. Perfect. But then there's a point in Dara's life that she feels that she's not marriage material. But I love what her sister says to her. She says, that's an excuse. For your entire life, all you've ever had are excuses. And don't tell me you like your life the way it is, because I know you. You were playing house longer than anybody I know. Okay? You were playing house longer than anyone I know. Who of us as little girls did not grow up playing house? Now, I grew up with several sisters, and you bet your bottom dollar that playing house was one of the things that we did together, and one of the things that we did individually. I had 3 daughters, and they played house. Okay? That's one avenue I thought about with this book, going down that direction. Another direction, looking at the blurb. Okay? This rom-com here has Dara with a list, and there's at least 3 things on this list. A doctor or lawyer, baggage free, which means no previous marriages, no children, and of course he must be Jewish. What does that list comprise of? What is this Mr. Perfect on paper about? The list is what would make the perfect Jewish husband. Okay, now we're going to talk about that list, okay? Now, this happened later in the book, but it's not going to upset the balance of me not giving you any spoilers or anything like that. But at one point, Shayna and Dara were drinking, and Sarah scribbled out this perfect Jewish husband list. Doctor or lawyer, baggage free, and Jewish. And she left, and that piece of paper, as far as she knew, went in the trash. But Dara has nieces and nephews by her sister Shauna, and they thought it was, just something, a piece of paper to draw on, and their grandmother, or their great-grandmother, Dara's grandmother, saved that paper. Well, that's the story that I want to tell you, because remember I said there's different avenues I could go down for this book review. Okay, so what happens here is Dara, her mother, and her grandmother have a 3-generation dating service, a Jewish dating service that Dara, with her intense, incredible skill at coding, has turned into an app. So it's a Jewish dating app, and this dating matchmaking business has turned her into a multimillionaire. Okay? Now, the app itself is called JMate, and she has lots of other apps and programs that she has created. But when this app is taking off, she gets invited to participate in a morning talk show to promote that app, that dating app that pairs 2 Jewish people together. Now, this matchmaking business is legit and serious and successful. I think, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the realm of 10,000 successful matches. These matches have created children and grandchildren. Yeah. about 10,000 matches. Okay, so she goes on this show, but she doesn't go alone. She goes with her grandmother, Miriam. Now, the thing about Miriam is, I think, just about 90. She's 89. And she was the originator of this matchmaking thingy, because the thing with the Jewish culture is there were certain expectations on young people when they reached a certain age in that culture. And with those expectations, it evolved into the matchmaking business. So now in Dara's time, she gets the opportunity to go with her grandmother, the originator of this matchmaking program, to appear on this morning talk show. Now, she's excited even though she's nervous, and I'm going to tell you why she's nervous in a minute. And one of the reasons that she's excited is because she is about to meet her idol. Okay? His name is Chris Steadfast, and he is the host of this morning talk show. And she has pretty much like a celebrity type crush on him, and she's excited to appear on his show. Now, I mentioned that she was nervous. Well, she has general anxiety disorder. Now, I have anxiety, and I know that there are different forms of anxiety, but honestly, I never heard it referred to as GAD before, general anxiety disorder. And one of the things is worry, worry, worry. Whatever the situation was, Dara insanely worried, and it kind of played into some OCD, like what's the word I'm looking for? I'm losing my word. Tendencies, some OCD like tendencies, and in order to maintain control over that, she was a list maker. Okay, she was a list maker, and making these lists helped her to keep that control. She wasn't full out OCD like I've seen or heard about, but it was there, and she kept a hold of it by her list making and the order that she kept her life in. Well, she goes on the show, and her bubby, that's her nana, her bubby, shared that checklist. And there was even more on that checklist than I mentioned earlier, those 3 things. Dara was embarrassed beyond belief. Chris was tickled. He thought it was hilarious. But there's a little bit of a problem with Chris. Chris's job on the talk show is at risk because the show is dropping in ratings. I'm just going to, so I'm not looking like that. The show is dropping in ratings, and he is facing losing his job on the show and having to start over somewhere else. Well, that scene where her grandmother, Bubby, on that live talk show shared that checklist, ratcheted up that show's ratings big time. Now, there's a side story here with Chris. Now, we've talked about Dara with her general anxiety disorder, and I have to say, as a reader and as a person who suffers with mental illness, I love that mainstream fiction is including mental illness and handling it with grace and not giving it any type of stigma. I love that. But what is Chris's story? Well, Chris is a widow with an 11-year-old daughter. Okay? And if he loses this job at this news station, then they will have to uproot their lives while he looks for another on-air job. And most likely it would end up being in another city. And as the story has been developing, we learn that because of the loss that Chris and his daughter experienced, they've already uprooted their lives. And that's why they ended up in New York on this, where he's working on this talk show. So that's the whole drama. But there's more. What more is there? The more is we'll talk about Daniel in a minute. Chris and Dara are very attracted to each other. They won't acknowledge it. They can't acknowledge it because she is Jewish, and not in name only. She lives Jewish. Her diet, recognizing the Jewish holidays, her style of dress, when and where she will drink. Chris is not Jewish. So any attraction that exists between the two of them can't go anywhere because the whole precipice of her business and her livelihood is pairing Jewish people together. And that's where Daniel, the name that slipped out a few seconds ago, he enters in the picture. So maybe she has found Mr. Perfect on paper after all. You'll have to read the book to find out how she met Daniel. And you'll have to also read the book because this is a romantic comedy, and it's very clear from the beginning that Dara and Chris are very drawn to each other. But there's a huge wall that separates them, a huge chasm. So you have to read this book to figure out, does she go with Mr. Perfect on paper? Or can she and Chris find a way to traverse that wall without compromise? Because compromise, when it comes to faith, is never a good thing. So how in the world is this going to work out? Now, it's called a romantic comedy. And I had to think about this. Now, I can see why it would be called a romantic comedy because there were very good comedic moments, especially with the dates that Dara was going on. But I saw the seriousness of it. The seriousness of Dara dealing with her anxiety and her panic attacks. The seriousness of Chris still dealing with the loss of his wife, even though it has been 2 years, and the effect that it has on his daughter. And lastly, and this doesn't pertain to comedy or seriousness, character-wise, I loved Chris's daughter in this book. I loved her in this book. So, that is Mr. Perfect on paper. I have it for a blog tour. I'm so glad that I did get it because if I didn't get approached to do this book as a blog tour, I probably would have never read it and I would have missed a fabulous read. So this is a Mirror publication that I got from NetGalley, so I'm going to thank Mirror and NetGalley. The author is Jean Meltzer, and it's about $11 on Amazon, and from what I can tell, this is her 4th book. So I'm so glad that I got to meet her in the page. Nope, I take that back. I just pulled her up on Goodreads. I read The Matzo Ball by her. Let's see, when did I read The Matzo Ball? November 2021. So less than a year ago, I did read a book by her. So I love Jean Meltzer, and I love this book. And if you read this book, one of the things that I love about books is sometimes there's author notes and acknowledgments at the end of the book. This has some discussion questions. And one of those questions is, are you Team Daniel or Team Chris? And if depending on what your answer is, why? So keep that in mind if this is a book that you want to get and read. And don't hesitate to check out your library because you might find it there. So I want to thank you for watching, and believe me, I will be back with more. Bye-bye.